Go, Naomi.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome to Land Down Under Hangout. This month is my month's pick, which is The Threads That Bind, which Elizabeth is holding up right now. I do
Very
not have
nice.
a physical copy. I just have a Kobo copy. It was written by Kika Hatzopoulou. I'm not even going to try and
Hatzopoulos.
pronounce it. I
Thank
will
you.
butcher it. I'm very sorry. So I'm going to start off first with how I just thought of it overall. I was a bit mixed. There were points in the book where I kind of almost DNF'd it. And then I was like, no, I'm going to push my way through because I want to finish this book because it's my pick. And I actually really enjoyed it by the time I got to the end. But there were sort of points that I felt like the story was kind of a bit dragging or lagging. But we'll get into that more in depth later. I did quite enjoy a lot of the characters, although, again, some of the characters I felt were just a bit there for the point of being there. Like, but we'll get more into details further into the hangout. Sarah, what did you think?
Um, I actually really enjoyed this. I didn't know if I was going to be able to read this, and I was very back and forth on it. And then I found out, oh, it's actually a shortish read in terms of the type of um, kind of alternate world fantasy that we do. So I was like, okay, cool. And I like murder mysteries. I really do. So this was, and it was also an easy read for me. So I enjoyed that. Um, I felt the whole time, which is, I'm just trying to unlock my notes. I felt a little bit like I was reading a whole lot of somebody's inspirations. That was the only, like, it was good. Like, she's built up a really interesting world, but I felt these inspirations. And I think I wrote here, this feels so much like Six of Crows meets Gods of Jade and Shadow. Um, the Six of Crows being set in basically an alternate Amsterdam with all the water, and this is sort of, as it turns out, post-apocalyptic somewhere in Greece. I'm not sure where. A place, and then the trolley cars and the vibes and the nightclub and all of that was that sort of 1920s vibes of in Mexico in Gods of
Jade.
Jade and Shadow. There's too many gods there, and also the gods thing, which was cool. And I also wrote here that the magic system and how the world sees the gifts reminded me of Mistborn. And then there was actually a bit where I wrote I wrote, I felt like that I made a note that when they were in the dreaming sequence, where they were actually at the dreaming place, that I was like, oh gosh, this sounds great. I'd love to have a 20-minute nap. This, and then I was like, it's kind of like Inception, but without the shared dream. And then literally 30 seconds later, there's a shared dream. So I felt like it was pulling from a lot of areas and not. I wasn't sure it was doing enough that was new. But I did like how the author was obviously using her culture and heritage to build out this type of modern mythology, and I did really enjoy that. There, I thought that the themes, like, again, it was very short, so it didn't get too deep into some of it, and I thought maybe there was a bit too many, but we'll get into that. I think that she was trying to do maybe too many things in the length of
Yes,
novel that she had.
that was the,
um
like, she
that's
was
your
trying to
thoughts
get to
too?
too many points and not quite
Yeah,
getting to most of them.
yeah, she wasn't spending enough time to get deep enough into a lot of the psychological stuff that's going on for the sisters and the world. And then there's politics, so they had that kind of China. So there was a lot she was trying to do, and I'm glad there's a book too. But I also acknowledge, I think this is her first novel, and I thought, bravo to you. I think, like,
Oh, is
I'm
it?
going to read book two. I'm going to read book two, basically, because I really enjoyed the murder mystery, and it looks like it's going to go in an interesting direction. So yeah, that's me.
Elizabeth.
Um, uh, I it was okay. I mo The world building was really interesting. That was definitely engaging. The plot was a bit predictable and the characters were a bit flat, and there were some times where I was struggling to keep engaged. Um, but the I think the world building pulled me through for the most part. So I'm not sure. I'm not sure I would read a second book. Like if it came out for book club, I'd be like, yeah, okay. But I'm not sure I could be bothered to track it down for myself. But like Sarah, like I do like a good mystery, murder mystery. Um, so that was I enjoyed that and the yeah, mostly just the setting.
Mel, what was your
I DNF'd. I got about 20% in, I think. And because I think mostly because I'm in a readathon, and so I really felt under pressure to read a certain number of books this month. And so when this one became sort of like, I'm not picking it up, I was avoiding it like literally, and I was like, you know what, I need to move on and read something else because if I've got to meet this part of my challenge, this is a
yeah?
problem. And so I was just like, yeah, okay, I'm just going to DNF this. So yeah, it
It
didn't work
became a
for me.
chore to pick up and read rather than
Yeah,
picking up because you were
Yeah.
enjoying it.
yeah, pretty
I totally
much.
that was kind of what I meant by dragging in some points.
Mm.
Like
Mm.
I didn't have the urge to just pick up the book and continue reading it. I was just like, oh, I can put it down. Oh, I have to
Certainly
get
at the
back.
beginning, I felt like once we got to the midpoint, it started to move a little bit more. But yeah, I absolutely understand what
That's
you mean because I was like,
interesting
oh,
because
you know,
I actually found it harder after the midpoint. I think because
oh,
the
interesting.
angst quotient went up.
I
Uh,
think it took me about 2/3 of the way before I sort of was like, okay, this is starting, like it's starting to get to a point. Because, like Sarah said, there just seemed like there was a lot of things that she was trying to do and she wasn't quite getting to them, or she wasn't quite finishing the point she was trying to get to before moving on to something else. And I think it was about 2/3 of the way through before I was like, okay, I'm kind of into this story now. I want to know where it's going. Whereas I was for that first half to 2/3 sort of just picking it up because I wanted to finish it for Hangout.
Mm. Bobby's here now. Let's
Hi,
find out what she
so
thought.
So
what
we've
did I
just done
think?
overall thoughts. So
Okay. Yeah, overall thoughts. So overall I enjoyed it. I was thank you for picking it because I don't think it would have been on my radar otherwise. So that was nice. Um, and let's see what else. Yes. So far what I was hearing kind of really matched what like kind of what my expectation or what my experience was like it was at least very pretty sounding. So I think that helped kind of me coast through the first half of the book or whatever. There, but yeah, it took a while. It took a while for me to really properly get into the story and be like,
Mm.
oh, here we go now. Like, so, but yes, I'm glad I read it. I haven't decided if I'm gonna read the second one, but I've put it on my TBR so I don't forget that it
Mm.
exists.
Mm.
Yeah.
Helps that it's not out yet, so you don't have to make a decision right now.
It's true. Yep.
it might end up being a book that I read because I've got a baby that's sleeping on me because it comes
Yeah.
out in
Mm-hmm.
June. So
Mm-hmm.
so it may just be a book that I'm like, I will read this because it's come out and I, you know, am interested in seeing what happens, but mostly because I really enjoyed the magic system. Like,
Yes, I really enjoyed the magic system. Yeah.
Yeah.
like that was the thing that kind of kept me going. Like I was interested in how these different, because it seems like almost like it was different types of magic from different gods, but they all kind of basically came down to the same sort of thing, but using different I can't speak. This is my baby brain. I can't speak. I can't say big words anymore. They're all gone.
Attribute?
Attributes, yes. Like they're sort of
Yeah.
like, they're either violence or they kind of like use your dreams, or they can sort of use the like soul sort of threads, or like they all kind of work in a similar-ish way, but not really.
Mm-hmm.
Mm.
I actually have a question about it because obviously I didn't finish the book, but when I read sort of some of the descriptions of what was going on with what she could do with her magic and how she could cut threads of specifically that she did that for people who had addictions.
Mm-hmm.
My immediate brain was immediately like, can she do that for food? Because and
Yeah.
would it be okay to do so? Because if you cut the addiction, do you cut the entire will to eat?
So she mentions at one point in the book that she had to cut. So when she cuts a thread, she has to cut one of her own. And one of the threads that she cuts was her love of an eclair.
Yes.
And while she said she may be able to build that thread back, she doesn't have that urge to want to go and buy it and eat it.
Yeah.
So it's not like a forever fix. You kind of need to want to not do the thing again, like do the gambling, do the drugs, eat the eclair, whatever it is that you're severing, you kind of need to want to not do it anymore because you can build your thread back from what she was sort of saying.
Mm-hmm.
Would anyone disagree? Like that sort of seemed like what she was sort of describing, that threads
I rather got the impression that idea of she doesn't have, or that she doesn't have the urge to go and build it back or have that eclair anymore would even like probably impact whether or not she even bothered to try and build the thread back up as well, so that because you've got that whole
but I think that was different, and that was a love that she had for food. It wasn't an addiction. And I think she said at one point, she said like, and I think this tracks, like I think she's got some kind of psychological theory background, because she was putting a lot of that into her themes, like a bit too much. But she said with addiction, like it may or may not work, because I think like that understanding of addiction is that often it's filling a void, and some people will go, I'm not addicted to this, and they'll just switch to, you know, that need to fill something switches to something else. So I thought that I thought actually she dealt with that really well, to say, you know, you can cut that addiction, but that doesn't mean it's not going to spring up somewhere else, or that they're going, I know I used to get a lot out of that, so I'm just going to turn to it again, you know. So I thought she actually handled that really, really, like the understanding of what that's like really well.
But also, like, she has an interest in telling herself that story, because of what she's done to her sister.
Yeah.
So I don't really think that it's reliable, considering like there has been, like, she gives no examples of it actually ever happening.
That's true.
It's just
the she I was referring to is actually the author. Was you know, she's like putting that in, but you're right that she does tell herself a lot of stories, and some of them are false stories in a negative way on her. So that's true, which is, you know, a good point.
She does say to Rosa at one stage, because the thread that she cuts in defense is Rosa's love for her grandmother, and she does say, oh, that may build back for you, because obviously that familiar love is something that you want to try and foster. Like that's a thread that you may want to try and get back, so it may build back.
But yeah, again,
obviously we don't sort of get to see that. So,
and it serves her interest to tell that. It helps to kind of ease her guilt that she's done this to her friend Rosa, and also to her sister. But like, there is no kind of real evidence we're given in like in the world at all that is actually a thing that ever happens.
Okay, I thought she'd referred to some of her clients coming back and asking her to do it multiple times. Did you guys ever see what's that movie with Jim Carrey and what's her name? Not Kate.
Eternal Sunshine of
the Spotless Mind. And has everyone seen it?
Yep.
Yes, because we did it as a live watch.
Yeah. Well, the spoiler at the end is that you can be made to forget someone, and then one of the characters has done it multiple times and continues to seek that person out, like, and that's her, and that discovery of like, oh, this doesn't work, this whole thing of trying to forget someone actually doesn't work. because there is something more innate deep down. Again, this might be where there's so many inspirations and pulling from things in this book, which everybody does. Everything's a remix, isn't that the saying?
Yes, indeed.
Should we unpack the sisters a bit? Because I would like to find out how to pronounce the oldest sister's name, because I don't know, because I read it. I want to see what other people think. But yeah, I'd like to unpack that a little bit if everyone's up for it. Is that okay with you, Naomi?
Yeah, no, that sounds great. I was actually going to suggest we talk about the
Perfect.
sisters first.
Okay.
So,
Perfect.
Bobby, I think did you end up listening to it? You got
I did listen to it.
good.
And I'm trying to remember which one was which. Like certainly the storyline and who was doing what. I remember which one was the eldest and which one was the youngest, but I don't remember the name.
Io was the youngest, of course. Ava
Okay.
was middle.
Yeah.
And then is it Thais?
I think it's
Thais.
I think it was Thais or Thais.
Okay. Yeah.
Um,
That's what I couldn't know. I wasn't quite sure how to pronounce it. Yeah.
Yeah. My guess was Thais, but again, I wasn't sure. So
yeah. I picked it straight off that she was the one behind everything.
Yeah.
That was not that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Even though, like, I was wondering if I maybe somehow just knew. I was assuming that because I had in the back of my head some Greek mythology that I wasn't necessarily remembering. I don't know, but
No, it's because they're inverting the Greek tropes because
okay.
the cutter as like is displayed in the world everyone's afraid of because and in this like she has a heart of gold, so of course you're going to have like a weaver, like someone who spins the thread,
Yeah.
to be someone who is actually not very good-hearted, if you're like inverting the tropes in this way. So it
Makes
was
sense.
easy to
But I
see
mean, the middle
she's not
sister
going to be
didn't
good.
seem like she was all that good either. Like
Uh,
how long had she been playing Io for that she kind of, you know what I mean? Like we kind of got towards the end where you were like, oh, you're playing your sister, but like how had she been doing that before they just even left? Like were they both playing her for that long?
What was Ava doing?
So Ava was with Thais the whole time. Like she knew like they went off together at the end. They knew
Yeah, no, but
Ava knew everything that Thais had been doing, and like it sounded like they had been like working together.
I didn't get that impression at
that.
all. I just got the impression from the relationship that Ava is subservient and is the peacekeeper, and just and because when it also was really was obviously devastated by Thais leaving, but considering she doesn't know what Thais asked Io to do, which was to cut her love for music, like that's going to come out in the future, obviously.
Yeah.
I just thought it was just kind of but finding out that that Io and Rosa were behind the whole fraying of the home thread and the putting the dreams into Theus's head.
because the sisters are supposed to stick together, and Ava
Yeah.
is really attached to that narrative.
Yeah. And Ava and Ava just my feeling from what got revealed is Ava doesn't know that was the final thread for Io, which was where she and I mean it's that I suppose this is what I want to unpack is like how did we feel the author did with the toxic narcissistic personality of Thais, because I like right from the beginning, the moment she started calling it idiot, I really despised the sister. I don't like that as it's just not a term of endearment. But then there were things that she said, like you don't steal other people's boyfriends, which makes sense. Like she has, I thought Thais was interesting in terms of she obviously has values, and that's the whole thing she builds up, around this character. This character has values, but becomes very like, I'll do anything the greater good is worth the what's the saying, guys? We like
Um,
I
the end
think
justifies the means.
oh yeah, the
yeah,
ancestral
yeah, yeah,
study,
yeah, yeah. The
yeah.
means just thank you,
Yeah.
Elizabeth. Yes,
I mean,
yes,
honestly, even the advice to Io of you don't steal other people's boyfriends, I actually read that as that was a convenient way for her to put to Io to have Io to push Io to cut a fate thread that would have removed Theus's control over her sister.
right. But
That's
I thought
actually
it was right. That makes sense. I just thought it was advice
that's the
generally.
thing,
Yeah,
and
that's kind of
that's
what
the
I thought as well, that Thais was trying to get Io to cut that thread when she was very young and a lot more impressionable, to be
Mhm.
like, to try and sort of control her and keep
Yeah,
her in the sisterhood,
gotcha.
because if she
and,
needs to,
yeah,
fate that,
Okay,
like,
that makes a lot more
I
sense. That makes a lot more sense. Yeah.
and
I
also
for a very
like
long time was like, oh no, I'm not going to touch him. I'm not flirting with him. I'm not going to
mhm.
interact with him any more than a friend, because we don't kiss other people's boyfriends. Like, she was very, very like while she was definitely crushing on him, she was very sort of, she tried to keep that wall as best she could.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
And
because
I
she
think
also
that,
at the time, I don't know, I have to refresh my memory. Did they all know that, what was his name? Sorry, I've forgotten.
It
This is
is.
what you,
Iris, it's
Eris?
Eris, I think his
I
name is.
think it's
Oh,
Eris. I think
oh,
it's Eris and Io is what I think it is because
Eris,
Eris,
yeah.
Eris and
Eris.
Io.
Thank you.
Eris, yeah.
Eris. I think I kept reading as Eric in my head, even
Yes.
though it
But
wasn't.
like the
Don't know
thing
why.
is like but with Io and Theus, Io doesn't really completely seem to, at least I don't know how much of the reveal to the reader about how controlling Theus was specifically for the reader and how much of it was
Mm,
Io's personal journey really coming to terms with exactly how controlling and narcissistic and
yeah, no,
whatever
you're right.
he was
You're right.
because you absolutely could read that first kind of
Mm,
flashback of Theus saying that, giving that advice, being through the filtered lens of the young sister who's listening to her older sister, who obviously knows more about the
Very.
world. So it would sound quite reasonable until you know more about the actual character of Theus.
yeah, no,
And
and
it
you're right.
becomes
You're
clear
right. That
that she had
actually
her own
opens my
motivation there.
lens of how manipulative, because
Mhm.
she's obviously toxic personality traits
Yeah.
and
Mhm.
narcissistic personality disorder. Um, she is, because it's everything is to her own goals and to her own control and her own power, because it's all about, yeah. And I think this is, there wasn't enough story there to need more time, and as a lot of you have said, it drags a bit, but I
Mhm.
feel like this is maybe where I was talking about Naomi, where I felt the themes were they were good themes, but there was almost too many of them. And she
Mhm.
didn't get
Yeah.
in deep enough, but there wasn't enough plot to keep that sustained. So I understand that. Um,
Yeah,
but I
I feel
like
like
the things she's exploring. And I think this author is one to watch as she develops her talent, because I think
yeah,
she's exploring some really important things.
I think that first it's Edei is his name, Eddie.
Eddie. Oh,
I
Ah,
Eddie.
up because I'm like,
All right,
no, I'm sure
who's
that's not
Eris
right, but
then?
now I need to
who
look it
was
up.
Eris?
Eris is the goddess of Discord.
Yeah,
Yay!
okay, there we go.
Sorry, we're using Zoom. We apologize. We just didn't, we
I
didn't think about
didn't
you all the
take
time.
notes. The last 6 weeks have been extremely busy and really hard. The fact I was getting the audiobook in whenever I was going for walks, like at this really random part. I didn't have a way of taking notes and having names down. Sorry. I'm
All good.
going to bring this all
No, that's right.
discussion.
But yeah, like, you're right, Sarah, in that she did have a lot of themes that she was trying to cover, and I think that's why it felt like, I think partly because she was trying to subvert who who people were aiming as the bad guy, because she was
Mm.
like,
Yeah.
oh, the bad guy's Bianca, oh, the bad guy's Luke,
So
oh, the
Yeah,
bad
but as
guy, like, she
Elizabeth
was
said, it was predictable. But maybe
like,
it's because we've read a lot of this, but it was
probably, but
predictable.
like, it felt like because she kept trying to change the focus of who the bad guy is,
Mm-hmm.
that we were like, that she didn't get deep enough into any of her themes to really get to the nitty gritty of them. Like, because she kind of attached themes to different characters rather than just a theme or a couple of themes to like overall the story. if
Yeah.
that makes sense.
Yeah, that
Yes.
Like she sort of had a theme that was like for Bianca and the stilts, and then she had a theme that was for, you know, the animal fighting and out at the docks, and then she had another theme when we went out to the
which
police.
was honestly completely unnecessary. Like I was like, okay, now you're introducing this into the world, and now they're fight. I like, and then there's nothing else. Maybe
and then,
next game, I'm like, this is
the
completely
animal fighting
unnecessary.
just kind of came and went. Like,
yeah,
I
was
feel
like, why can't you just have people fighting? Just have people fighting.
It was
and that
completely
will be,
unnecessary.
It really was.
I think it was, the only thing I could come up with was she wanted to somehow slip into that within the world you have chimeras. That's the only thing I could come up with. There totally better ways to do this. Like I felt like that little scene was very unnecessary. But
yeah, because I
get why
in the second story we see more of the animals.
I think she's setting up something for that, maybe, and why they've appeared, like why these kind of clone-like monsters have appeared. But it was like the whole fighting part.
It should not be in the book.
Yeah, it didn't need to be there, but it felt like she was in there to try and make that guy a bad guy. But
he could have had all I kept thinking, all I had, and this was Six of Crows all over again in my head, was, you know, how, you know, I've got the TV Hello Pussy. Oh, very cute. I'm going to get cat bum.
That's on the internet now. You've just had that recorded to go onto the internet. Everyone in the world's going to see your bump now.
Look, there's a starfish.
Look, Kitty, being embarrassed.
He's embarrassed. She's showing it off. She's like, hey, look at me. Anyway, sorry. I was talking about. Oh yeah, like I got like that whole bit there. It just reminded me of Six of Crows. You know, like with what's his name, the wolf guy. You know, like, and I was like going, well, that was people fighting. And you got banned for people. Just like more people fighting, like, and maybe it's people who've really been othered, which would have then given, like, maybe it's like the Egyptian people, like, who've come, because obviously that's where Eddie is from. That could then be like, that could have been woven a little bit more about why he really hated him, because he's taking advantage. Like that would have had more, and you could still have the chimeri. What are they? Thank you. You could still have them, but they would just be kind of like, oh, you know, she glanced down the road and it bounced across the street in one shape like that. Like, I liked that world building wise. I thought that was really strong. I didn't need to have them fighting one another. That was just really shit.
Yeah. But yeah, it just seems like there was a lot of different themes where she was trying to give us information, to give us different bad guys or give us different places to look. And none of them really got sort of, because they were kind of all to their own chapter, we never really got, because then by the time we got to the end of the book, we had moved on to a different theme that was completely different to some of the ones that we had in the beginning.
Yep. Also, honestly, she could have just made one passing reference to about, oh, this is this person who runs the underground chimera fights. We didn't need a whole walkthrough of that.
I didn't need a scene of them doing the chimera. Hell, we could have had Io going to the docks and seeing the animals in cages, and that would have been enough. Like, we could have.
And then she wants to have a discussion about buying one or something, you know, like
something, you know, like that.
And then he leads it down the path.
A whole chapter about animal fighting. But
Yeah.
I'm very sorry. Going back to Sisters.
Yeah.
And how.
Sorry, it's us.
What we were talking about. And just talking about how their gifts work. Like, obviously, Io is the cutter, and that obvious, like, you know, that very clearly sort of lines up with the Greek mythology of the cutter. And then Thais is the weaver, who very clearly lines up with the weaver of the three. But then Ava's gifts never really get explored, because she's kind of like pulled back from doing her bit, but she's still very like, oh, I want us to be sisters and a family, but she's not using her gifts to like be one of the sisters.
What did she do? I don't actually know what her part of this.
Because
So
she's the
the
spinner, but because of the three, that's the one we're missing, but we don't really know.
and the spinner should be the oldest sister because that's the way the process goes. You spin the thread first, then you weave, then you cut.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
she
I do feel like Thais was more of a spinner though. Like if you literally think about Spin City politicians, she spun lies. She
That is
like
true,
maybe that
but
was
like it's Ava's the one with the power to kind of strengthen or weaken threads.
uh yeah, and that would be a spinner. That would be a
A
spinner's
spinner.
ability.
right. Not a weaving ability. Because I would have think weaving, like, if you're making ropes, how many you take the threads and the more threads you have to weave together, you make a stronger rope.
Weaving is Theus's.
Yeah, I just surprised. I like this is the thing.
Like they've
I don't
reversed
remember.
reversed the sisters, the first two sisters. Like they've made the oldest
Mm,
one the weaver and the middle
right.
the spinner, instead of the oldest one should have been the spinner, and then the middle
Mm.
one should have been the weaver.
Mhm.
But that doesn't fit in with the like family dynamic that they're trying to set up there.
Yeah.
Because you can't have the middle sister like being like the surrogate parent, really.
Mhm.
Right. So is that because that's interesting? Because I feel like so much of what Thais did was spinning. Like she was so, but she was like strengthening or weakening, wasn't she? Like, but yeah, oh, so interesting. Whereas she was spinning little things. Like it's interesting because she kind of was trying to do. Well, that was it. She was so controlling. She was trying to do the other two sisters' jobs, but not have them.
And
Yeah.
she was generating threads, so I'm still a little confused.
because they kept referring to her as the Weaver, yes,
Yeah,
Yeah, they kept referring to
but
her as the Weaver.
Okay.
she would create threads,
yeah, that's
which
right.
would be the spinner's job, not the Weaver's job.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because
Weaver
the
Mm.
takes the
spinner
threads and
spins the thread
makes
to
the
create
textile.
it.
Yeah.
The Weaver like strengthens the thread or weakens the thread, and then the cuts the thread.
Mm.
I'm right, aren't I? Like
Mm.
they do refer to her as the
The
I,
Weaver on multiple occasions.
I'm going to my
yeah.
Kindle because I don't remember.
Good. Someone has the physical, like a physical copy we can check on. Would you
I
like
mean, I
that?
have a physical copy, but I actually think that Sarah will have a
Yeah,
better job because she's got a
Yeah.
word search.
I've got a search
Yeah.
function.
The first one, here we are. The first one born was the spinner who could weave new threads. The second was the drawer. She could elongate or shorten a thread,
Ah,
intensifying or weakening the corresponding feeling, which
okay.
plays into like how Ava is trying to like smooth out
Mm,
Yes.
family dynamics.
Yes.
yes. Yeah,
Yeah.
being
And
Yeah.
the
She's trying to
diplomat.
get an even, she's always trying to have an even textile
yeah,
within
yeah,
or
because
an even
there's
dynamic. Yeah.
because when they leave their apartment and they go and stay with Amos, their friend, like
Mm.
she does that to Io. She's like trying to calm Io down by like manipulating her threads, and therefore Io's emotion, like trying to calm her down.
Okay. So, okay, that's interesting. So so Thais is definitely the spinner. And then, okay, well, that's good. Okay, turns out we're fine. Oh, look at that pussy cat. Sorry, I'm big on cats. I'm
Yeah,
very,
yeah, this is my life right now.
it's all good. It's not attacking you because you
No,
smelled it.
she's not.
Because I had that. Being stalked and attacked on the legs.
No, no. She doesn't seem to appreciate getting kicked, so she doesn't sit near the bump. She sits up here.
Um, um, yeah, what did I? I felt with the sisters, I did feel a little triggered, even though I don't have anybody who's being toxic or narcissistic with them. I've never had that, but I felt really just awful for the sisters with what Thais was doing. And I think it really came to a head when she described how when she went to the house on the hill, I went to the house on the hill, and Thais you know, she said that was the thing about, like, if she was in a good mood, that was like the sun shone.
Yeah.
Yeah, actually,
Yeah.
I know why I know why I'm triggered, because this is like what it's like. It was so much like what it's like when I've worked for narcissistic bosses. You know, basically, CEOs of startups, they're all like this. They're all narcissistic. What is it? Not psychopaths. The next one down.
Sociopath?
Sociopathic. But I don't know whether she was or not, but definitely like toxic.
She definitely
Very
had
good.
toxic narcissism.
Yeah, and that thing at the end, which I did really like, where she said, where Thais, when she said, oh, you know, when Io said, don't speak that way to Ava or something like that, and then Thais rounded on her and started, you know, picking at her faults, and she's like, what? And then she's like, because it's what a politician does, like try and, you know, get you to look this way, or, you know, like, you know, and I fall for this shit all the time. And so I was feeling really, I really loved how she dealt with that, because I was like, I would love to be able to kind of see through that cloud of, you know, of insults, to kind of go, I actually can see what you're doing, and you're just trying to deflect and change and get to me emotionally. And she said that, whatever, but what has that got to do with actually what you've done to Ava? And I thought that was good, and I liked that a lot, because I was like, I wish I could be that person who could see through all of that.
I thought that Thais is one of the better done characters in the book. Like she's got like I wouldn't say she's perfect, but she's got more dimension than say Rosa, who doesn't really get much time and is kind of just a plot device.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I want more Rosa though. This was the stupid thing. I actually wanted more of her, because I liked the friendship. She felt like someone who was in the author's head, who we didn't get much of, if that makes sense.
Yeah, yeah. And like 'cause like you've got that whole narrative of like the sisters stick together, but Rose is the one that really has Io's back no matter what.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And I would
Like,
have liked to have seen her fleshed out a bit more. And she seemed
Yeah.
fun.
She did, and she had her shit together, and she could see things for what they were. I mean, she's a journalist at the end of the day, so she has to have that ability.
yeah.
Yeah, I really enjoyed her interactions. What I think I would have liked before the scene on the bridge where she cut Rose's thread is actually hints of her before, so that when it was revealed that she was a friend of hers, it hit us a little hard. It hit us because we didn't know her at that point. And then when we met her later, when they met up and they were having that smoke, you know, in the dormitories, and I was like, man, she's cool. Where's she been? You know, like, whereas if we'd had some of that, like where I was feeling guilty and about, oh, what I did to her and what Rosa did, like if we'd had more kind of maybe backflashes or something, I think that would have given us a bit more grounding. So when she realized it was Rosa, you know, that would have been like, oh no, what's happened? And, you know, that kind of stuff. So maybe we'll get more of her in the second book. I don't think we will, but yeah.
It was interesting that Thais was very, you know, we've got to keep the sisters together, but she wanted the sisters together just for her and
Yeah.
for her means. Whereas
Yeah.
Rosa is really the only one that stuck together with Io or Io. Like, it didn't matter that I didn't really talk to her a lot at the moment. Like, they had sort of drifted apart a little bit, but that didn't matter to Rosa. Like, they were still friends. Like, she would still have her back. And it wasn't a, I need you to do this for me sort of relationship, where it kind of feels like with Ava and Thais, Io just had to like, I need you to do this for me to keep this relationship. You know, you're
Yeah.
my sister. You should be doing this for me. And there was never
Yeah.
any giving back to Io. Like,
Yeah. Rosa
if it
said
was,
to her, and Rosa, I think because she's a journalist and she can see a spade for a spade, she said, you did what needed to be done, because she could see how toxic it was. No doubt I had said, Thais has asked me to cut Ava's love of music. And she's just gone, fucking ridiculous. What the fuck is this family dynamic? Like, that would be me if I was Rosa. I'm like going, you did what you needed to do. And you did, and really, I understand she's done it in a gentle kind of way that maybe Thais can go and find herself or find the cause that she's been looking for, which just sounds like she did. Like, I think, yeah, Rose is the only one who really and said, you don't need to feel guilty. You did what you need to do, but you also did it in the gentlest way you could to let.
And also, I understand that
the
separation from your city wasn't all sunshine and rainbows. Like, you had to work in these terrible conditions to get into this city, but you ended up finding someone that you thought was the love of your life. And really, if you had nourished that relationship that you said was the love of your life, you wouldn't have lost it. But you put your own self and your own needs above this person that you said was the love of your life, and you wanted them in your life forever, and you cared about them, but you didn't care about them enough to at least put their needs beside yours. Like, I'm not saying that you need to put the needs of the person you love more than yours, but they should at least be beside yours. You shouldn't be putting them well behind you and just doing whatever you want. Like, that's not a relationship where you care for that person so much they're the love of your life, you never want to lose them.
There were secrets.
That's the way you treat a relationship.
There were secrets. There wasn't trust there.
Yeah, like, that's the way you treat a relationship.
Not a foundation. Yeah,
don't really want to foster.
Yeah.
And it feels like Thayer's treated a lot of her relationships like that. And I don't know if that's because she became the substitute parent very young, and she had to, even before her parents passed away, she was very much a substitute parent. And I don't know if part of it has come from that, or if she was just born narcissistic with narcissistic tendencies, and that's just made it worse. I suppose it's very chicken and the egg. Like, what came first? Was the narcissist always a narcissist, or did they become a narcissist because of nature or nurture?
Yeah. Yeah, I think it was an interesting thing in the book. I don't know who said it, whether it was Io or it was said that she wanted to be thanked by them respecting and doing everything they want. Do you guys remember that bit?
Yeah. I was talking to Eddie about it.
Yeah.
And yeah, she said that Thais had given up a lot to bring them up. And yeah, that she after a while she seemed to expect that they would thank her by basically doing everything that she commanded.
And
I suspect she was always that way, but putting her in a position of power as,
But I feel like it was also like, well, I've given up what I see as all of this for you, so you need to give up all of this for me to make this relationship fair. But no one asked you to do that. Like, well, yes, you are the older sibling, and it's good that you could pick up and sort of be a parent to your younger siblings so that your younger siblings didn't die. No one was forcing you to do that. Like, this isn't something your children should be paying you back for. It's the same way that narcissistic parents expect their adult children to pay them back as adults because I raised you.
Yeah.
My mother. I'm not talking about your mother, but it's very funny that you walked in on that.
Oh boy.
Oh gosh. Glad Corinna didn't read this one.
She's bad.
Oh, I'd be interested to see if she's been triggered too.
Well, the reason I picked this book is because Karina got it for Secret Santa.
I remember it's such a beautiful cover because Elizabeth has. Elizabeth, you got a hardcover, haven't you?
Yeah, I do. I'm not sure if you can really see it, but like the pink lines on it are actually kind of metallic and sparkle.
I just know it is a beautiful cover. Yeah.
Well, that was part of the reason I picked it, because Book Talk kept being like, look at this beautiful book. It's so beautiful and pretty. You should read it. Pretty, 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 pretty. And I'm like, I can get wooed by a pretty book. And then Karina got it for Secret Santa, and I was like, well, I already own it, and it's on my to read list. So, like,
yeah.
Did she at least get to crack the spine first, since it was the gift for her?
Yeah, no, she started it first. It was, I think she's 45% of the way through, or 55% of the way through, and she was that before I even started. So she was
so she's DNF'd it.
No, she doesn't have a lot of time to sit down and physically read. And because we can't get an audiobook, like, I was very willing to pay for an audiobook. I looked everywhere to try and pay for this book as an audiobook. I was happy to pay for, like, you know, rather than just using like an Audible credit or whatever. I was happy to go and pay the $20 or $30 or $40 for an audiobook with someone else, with Kobo, with Google Play, iTunes, like whoever had the book. I was willing to just go pay it so I could listen to this book. No one had it. Can't get it in Australia. Only in the US. Stop scratching. Oh my God, you're shaking the bed. Stop. Sorry, the whole bed is shaking because the dog is sitting right there.
Oh, it's the dog. I was thinking, how forceful is this cat?
No, the dog. She's sitting on the corner of the bed, scratching herself. It's making the whole bed shake. And I'm like, I swear to God, just please stop. And now she's sad because I told her to stop.
Oh, I thought that was Aurelia coming in to go.
Aurelia's now finally asleep.
Oh, yeah. Well, you know, I just thought maybe it was Aurelia.
No, it took her an hour and a half, but she's finally asleep. That's neither here nor there. That's not for this discussion. That's okay.
That's a later topic.
Yeah.
What did you guys think about the whole, and this was another theme that I felt was kind of here, and she didn't get to really go into it, about the idea of fate and predestination versus choosing your own adventure and your own pathway.
Yeah, look, I'm not really concerned by the lack of development of that, because that I feel like is a trilogy theme rather than a book theme per se. So it's fine that she set it up and she hasn't done a whole lot with it, because I feel like that is something yet to come.
I did enjoy the fact that it wasn't like Fated Mates, where you meet for the first time and you're like completely in love and no one else matters. And, you know, like, I do enjoy the fact that while there is that fate thread there that kind of pulled them together, it's not like insta love.
Yeah.
Like some of the trashy romance books that I read.
Yeah. I appreciated that she was like, that she, part of her, I know she was also probably justifying it a bit to herself as well. I'll give her that. But the fact that she was like, I don't know if I can ethically just cut this thread. This involves someone else's life as well. Shouldn't they get a say in what happens here? And that's a hard thing to figure out. How the fuck you bring that up with someone? Like,
yeah, especially if that's
I really appreciated that was part of that whole discussion, internal thought process or whatever. So
yeah, like, especially since he's not otherborn, he doesn't really like. He doesn't. Well, he understands that people are otherborn. Like, it's not the same. You see the threads, or you can play the like halo to make people sleep, or you have that rage, or, you know, whatever it is that you're part of that magic system, you kind of know how it works. Like, you know, you kind of like, you know how it affects you, so you can kind of understand how someone else's magic system might work for them. Whereas if you're kind of not a part of that, you can see why she was like, I don't know how to take it to him, because he, like, will he even understand?
Yeah, but also, dude needs to not keep things quite so close to the chest.
I know. I mean, like, not even telling anyone, no, actually, by the way, we're not boyfriend and girlfriend. We just live together because she can't get her own place because she's not a citizen here.
Yeah.
Like, because it wasn't just that Io assumed, everyone assumed that they were still together.
Yeah.
I wonder if it was a little bit, though, wasn't a little bit like for the authorities type thing as well. Like, we're telling them we're still together because it's a stronger case for citizenship. And that I was actually, when he explained it, I was like, that makes sense. Yeah. And I was like, I get that. And I get why you're like, we're not together, but we're not kind of broadcasting it because we don't want the authorities to know, because our visa is based on us being together. Like, I completely understood that. And I was like, I get, like, and it's also like, well, why, you're just getting on with things. You've broken up. She has moved on. She's dating someone. I actually thought it was quite valid and actually kind of real life-ish, if you know what I mean. I've met people in those kind of situations, so it is tough where you don't, and you just kind of, and like working through those feelings isn't immediate. It can take a long time to get to the point that they got to. So then it's not like they want to make some big announcement until they've actually met. Do you know what I mean? Like, so I kind of, I got that whole bit where it's like, we don't want to make a song and dance about, because they could have got back together, because, like, so.
And I also understand why Io was still very, like, even after he had said that they weren't together, when she was like, okay, what does that mean that you like me, or does that mean that you're just not together? I'm still over here as a, like, friend person, like, because she was still very like, I don't want to push the boundaries of this. I don't know if what you're feeling from the fake thread is real, or if what you're like, if you actually have feelings for me. And I think that I hope that will be something that they explore later on, like, whether or not the feelings that the two of them feel for one another are just the fake thread, or if it is something that they do really feel. Because they mentioned at the end of the book that the fake thread is fraying.
Yeah, in the next book, I think, or something like that, it's going to be fraying. I also thought there was something
I thought that was in the last chapter of this book. I'm sorry.
Oh, maybe it was. Look, at that point I was like, I was just glad we were done. I think he said something as well, and that's why I understood, I kind of was with her, because it sounded to me like this isn't just something that happens all the time. Not everybody gets this. And the universe, the gods, whoever it has bestowed this. So you are kind of messing with the universe to cut it. It's not something that, do you know what I mean? Like, so I actually understood where she came from, which was, and he said, he's like, it's not your fault. You didn't make this. Like, lots of other people have this and aren't special. They're not, they don't have other abilities, and they don't know, and they find one. Do you know what I mean? Like, I actually understood that. It's sort of saying, it's, you just have, we happen to have this. I don't know. To be honest, it sounds like they would just meet at some point anyway. It was only because they were avoiding each other. Do you know? Because he worked where her sister worked, and she only was avoiding that because she knew that it led there. And I'm like, you guys would have met a lot sooner if you weren't so keen to avoid them. It's like, God, so it's one of those things of, you probably would just going to run into.
And I feel like, especially for Io being a cutter, she was so, once she sort of cut ties with with Thayers, she got very protective of threads in general, and very, like, if she was going to cut a thread, she wanted to make sure that she knew why she was cutting the thread, and that like, she understood it, because she didn't want to just cut threads. Like, she didn't want to, just because someone said, oh, this person's got an addiction, she wanted to talk to the person and make sure that they understood, I'm cutting this thread.
You got very, very concerned with consent. Yes.
Yes. Like consent, and just understanding that cutting this thread doesn't just affect the person that you're cutting it for. It may affect their whole family. And I liked that she got very protective of other people's threads. Like, she wasn't
poor Rosa, who she just went for.
To be fair, she was in the moment of being attacked. Like, it wasn't
that's true.
It wasn't like she went through and went, I'm going to pick your thread about your grandmother to cut. She was like, to defend myself, I'm just going to cut thread and hope, like, I know it's not your life thread, so hopefully it's okay.
Yeah. What
I'd
was I
just
going to ask?
like to go back though, because I said about Eddie keeping his cards close to his chest, and that
Yes.
is he's split up with his girlfriend, yes, but also he knew about the fate thread.
Yeah.
He
Yeah.
didn't
Like
say
the whole
anything
time.
either.
The whole entire time.
The
He knew
whole
about the
entire time.
thread.
Yep.
The
Yeah.
whole time.
Which all and both of those, well, those two things together, A, kind of speak to a pattern around his personality, but also B, kind of felt a bit like Deus Ex Machina. We're just gonna make this plot work.
Yeah, like,
Yeah, yeah. It was a little bit like how Face is back. And I was like, doesn't she know that because of the thread that lead, like if she's still or she's still connected? Like I remember I was like a little bit like that too. I was like, is there a plot hole there? Oh no, you are still connected to her.
but I mean, I suppose she would have to look where that thread goes to sort of see how close she is. Like, it's not like the thread gets
Yeah,
brighter closer or anything like that.
Yeah.
Like, I don't, from what
yeah,
I can understand from how they were describing the threads, she
yeah.
has to like concentrate on the thread to work out how far away the thing that it's linked to is.
And
Mhm.
what
Correct me if I'm wrong, but that's kind
No,
of how
I think you're right, but at the same time, I was still like, if she
and I
was so,
feel like she did what I do. Oh, I've got a thing that I don't want to think about anymore. I'm going to put that thing in
yeah,
a box. I'm going to put that box in a
Yeah.
shelf. I'm going to put it behind
yeah,
some. I'm never
yeah,
going to think about that thing
yeah.
ever again.
Except she
Box is
kept
gone.
like to us, the reader.
Yeah.
I was going to say,
which she,
what was
hang on, which
interesting.
she also had done with the freight thread. So she has a history
Yeah,
of doing that already.
yeah.
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 Well,
Put
and I
that
was
thing
going
in the
to
box.
say that
Lid
the
on that
two,
box.
both
I
her
think,
and Eddie, I was thinking about what you were saying with the history. I was like, they're basically two peas in a pod. If they're not fated because they're both kind of ignoring the things that they know and not talking about all the stuff to do with their family, whether it be their ex-girlfriend or whatever, that, you know, like, I'm like, Jesus, you guys are so alike. So,
and I mean,
yeah.
I understand Io not bringing it up because it's an awkward thing to try and bring up to someone. Hey, by the way, we have that fake thread. But
Yeah.
like,
Especially
him
after
not
he
bringing it
immediately was
up.
like, I don't believe in fate. First thing out of his mouth when he meets her is, I don't believe in fate. So,
Yeah. And then, but him not bringing it up when he knows that she would know about it because she can see the threads, make like, did he not want to know? Did he not want to talk about it because he was like, I don't want to talk about it because like I'm a boy and I don't want to talk about my feelings? Or is it like, I'm gonna put that in a box and I'm not interested in anything right now. No paramours, no nothing. Just put that away.
Another thing that felt a bit Six of Crows.
Yes. No
Yeah.
leeches, no guns, no paramours.
That's it.
Yeah.
Except Six of Crows was all about those guns.
Oh man, I'm so sad we're not going to get the ice palace storyline.
Oh, I
Sorry.
know.
I know. So I still think about that, and it was so cute.
I know.
He's such a good Jasper too. Baba. Anyway,
Makes me sad.
yes. I had some other notes. Oh, I liked the naming of the streets after herbs and spices. I really enjoyed that. I kept waiting for the next one. Oh, they're on Cardamom Avenue. Oh, they're on Tarragon Street. And there were a couple of others there that I thought were kind of, oh
And
yeah,
tease them up as
marjoram.
well. Because there was like chamomile.
Oh, there was? Oh, cool. I like that. That was really neat. I don't know if those are actually names of streets in wherever she is in Greece, where she said it, or if she just sort of made that up. Because I do know that
It's an
some
actual place. I don't think it's an actual
it
place.
is a I looked it up and it's a province where they're set, Atlanti, whatever it is. There's a province
Okay.
because obviously, yeah, like they had the whole Atlantis, but there was like a province or something. But I got the sense, I think Nancy, if I'm wrong, I think it's France, but I got sort of
Yeah, I
hints of
think
where
that
the
could
other
be French.
places were. Yeah. So that was
I
pretty
mean, it
cool.
is set in this world. It is this world that they're
Mhm.
in. It's just
Mm. It's
post-apocalyptic.
just post-apocalyptic, yeah, which
Yeah.
was
Plus,
oh, you missed me saying, Bobby, at the beginning, and I said that I felt this like it was Six of Crows meets Gods of Jade and Shadow vibes, because it had that 1920s like the Mexican 1920s feel. It had that same kind of the trolley cars and the nightclub singers and the fashion they were wearing, and then it was like, surprise, it's post-apocalyptic. And I thought that was, and then they were referencing the tall structures, which I thought was really cool. And something else I quite liked. I think I said here, I think I liked how the universe was built from her culture and heritage, and knowing she knows these places in Greece of her family, but it feels inspired and not nostalgic, which I think one of the things Elizabeth said was that kind of carried you through the story, was that she knows this world, and it's not like a throwback to, rose tinted glasses about somewhere you've been on holiday. She's actually just created somewhere in the future that's new, which I thought was cool.
And this wasn't her first published work, it was just her first solo work. So she had released two stories in like a compendium of stories.
That makes sense, yeah.
This is her first like fully novel. So which you kind of can understand some of these teething issues that she has, because it is her first fully fledged novel that she has released as an author by herself. And you can only hope that she grows from here, because while her work wasn't perfect, it wasn't bad.
Yeah. No.
Only hope that it gets better.
Yeah. And from all these inspirations that we have, she knows her shit. She knows her stuff. She knows all the stuff we know. So she's well read. She, like, the fact that she understands her mythologies, that she understands her movie reference, like she's pulling from all kinds of places, and that's only a good thing, because you can only build something cool and new, which I think she's got there. I think there's something really exciting here. So I'm looking forward to, I am going to read book 2, because I think it'll be really interesting to see how it is different and it has developed and she improves. And also, it's what I liked when I was reading, when I was like, oh my God, book 2 is Io and Bianca. Who saw that coming? This is the road trip I didn't know that was going, like, oh, I gotta find out what happens with these two. Like, that's kind of cool, because that was the thing at the end of Gods of Jade and Shadow, like the two of them together. I was like, I want to know what happens on that road trip, right? Like, what are they going to get up to? So I'm kind of, it's interesting, because it's like the two unlikely characters that you think are going to go off into the sunset to find their new adventure is actually these two. So that's, I'm looking forward to that, because I think that's interesting.
I'm just hoping that it doesn't have we're taking the hobbits to Isengard issues, where it's just a story about them like walking and camping. Like, I hope that while they're doing their walking and getting through the world, that they're seeing things and doing things that are actually moving the story forward, rather than just walking through the world for the sake of, you know what I mean?
I think the fact that she's done a murder mystery with all the clues and stuff, I feel confident she'll get there. Elizabeth, you were saying something.
I was going to say 2 things.
Sorry, I didn't.
1, absolutely, please report back. And 2, I do hope you're prepared for a trilogy, because like a book about 3 sisters is gonna have 3 books. One hopes.
At least it wasn't about who was the 9. I mean, that was like at least it's not the 9 muses. At least it's not them.
Yes.
Yeah. But it was that predictability you said about like the fear, like where the justice, or they were all the what are they called, the wraiths were all spouting justice, and I'm going, well, there must be a fury somewhere. This is all fury talk. So someone's either a secret fury, or as it turns out is a god of, like, there's a god up there. The one of furies is so I was like, yeah, well, as you said, it was predictable, but at the same time not quite, because I actually thought what's his name might turn out to be a fury. What was his name? Yves Saint Laurent. I can't remember his name. I know
Saint Laurent.
Saint Ives, yeah.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure his name was Luke. We're just making fun.
Yeah, Luke's son Eve. Yeah. So, yeah. I was just seeing if there's anything else I wrote that might be
I mean,
interesting.
to be fair, when I said I knew the sister was basically the villain. I didn't know all the other little tiny details, side details. Like I didn't pick that it was going to be Bianca who who was part one and the other, or was going to end up half and half. So like, I didn't pick those things. That was fun. So there was enough still kind of surprise happening that even though I was like, every time I was like, that's a red herring, that's red herring. There was still something else that happened that at least made me feel like I wasn't frustrated that it was obviously just there for a red herring. So
the
that was
fact
nice.
that Bianca turned out to be a wraith but was able to control through her powers, that was actually unexpected and really cool, and I think is leading us into an interesting place in book 2, because she's exploring this, like Bianca's basically going to be exploring who she is now, because she's different from who she so I think that's fascinating. I think it's interesting. And Bianca's become like, she already felt like a little bit one-dimensional, but now I feel like when we got to see the dreaming, and I think that there's a lot to this character, because she was always the bad guy.
The first half to third of the first half to 2/3 of the book, Bianca was just very like the queen of the stilts. That's all you see, just the queen of the stilts. And it wasn't until you kind of got to that last half to third where you kind of see, you see her dream and her part in the riots, and then you see what really went on and what's built her to be the person she is now, and why she protects those secrets so tightly, and just just seeing those sorts of things, like I think,
and she literally is someone who lived the end justifies the means, which was getting rid of all the Furies. And she's lived through that, and it's just that kind of compare and contrast of Thais and Bianca, and Thais not realizing that she is just a mirror of, this is what I mean, there's good shit here, there's really good interesting stuff here.
But that mirroring is what makes it even more interesting, that Ava's decision, because she has, like, on one hand she's got Thais, on the other hand she's got Bianca, and who does she choose?
So true. And so she's just basically like, she's just looking for someone to serve. I don't know, like I did write, like Ava's basically subservient. That is the type of person she is. Even if she is the what did they call her, the drawer, like the ability to, I don't know, even things out. She does seem to be attracted to those who make stuff happen, the creators, which is also what Bianca is. Bianca is someone who creates and tries to control chaos, as is Thais. That's so interesting. So interesting. So interesting, Elizabeth. So interesting.
Ava's more like Ava's very much a path of least resistance.
Yes.
Which is definitely not Io, because I remember like her and Bianca facing off with Eddie in between, trying to keep them apart.
I feel like Bianca is a lot more like Io, and is only more like Thais because she has to be. Like, she wants to protect the people of the stilts, and she did everything she could in those riots to protect the people of the stilts, even at her own detriment. And I'm hoping that book 2 is sort of showing that she is a lot more like Io, in the way that, well, she won't, just willy-nilly be like, I'll help you for nothing. The people that she cares about them deeply, and she will protect them, and like,
and it feels a little bit like that. I think that interesting, that theme of consent that we've seen running through things, and like to do with your fate threads and consent of cutting things, and it felt very much in the dreaming scene where she takes one of the sisters who's dying and gives her strength. There was a consent passed between her and the dying girl, to be like, I will buoy you up to help us fight, but that's you can either die here or you can be buoyed up to help. Will you help? Will you let me do? Like, it felt like I'll have to read back, but I do feel like there was a look exchange, there was a consent given that Faye's never really seeked. Like, there was like the people who were being there, she was like, oh, you're right, yes, I'm good, let's do this, like that certainly was there. It wasn't like, you've created me to go, I'm not going to go to your war for you. She's like, no, I'm here, I'm going to do this. So yeah, I'll reread that part, but I felt like whether I'm reading into it or not, it felt like she was a little bit more aware of and trying to make sure that the people she was I don't know what the word is, buoying up is the only thing I can think of. They're aware that the exchange is temporary. It's not a permanent thing. So yeah.
But I feel like once we got further into the story, she kind of used that I've had consent to do it once, so I will just keep doing it to protect what's mine. And that's sort of how she started leaning towards being more like Thais, where she was like, I'm just going to protect what's mine at any cost.
Yeah.
Even if the cost is the people I'm trying to protect.
Yeah.
Because
that's a complex character. That's good. That's a complex character. That's a well-rounded, faceted character.
She was very much, I would rather give up the one than give up the many.
I was just wondering if the conversation Sarah was referring to, if that was, I'm checking that wasn't when Bianca was saying, she said to someone on the street who had fallen during the riots, this, your fate is so much more, something like that, basically implying that you're not meant to be dying here, you're meant to be dying upright. I'm just checking it's not that conversation you're referring to, because
I don't know, but also I just realized something, as Elizabeth pointed out, we are seeing the dreaming from Bianca's perspective. So we don't know what happened. We are seeing what Bianca is choosing to remember, or how she thinks it went down. So that's another point, that it may not be of how it went down, but Bianca might be telling herself this narrative of how she thinks it went down, because we know, for instance, there was only one, I think in the dream there were two people fighting, but there actually was only one. It was only the Furies they were fighting, because Bianca had created this narrative, and like she'd so grown this narrative in her head that she dreamt it, that there were two armies fighting that she enclosed, but there was only the Furies. So that's the other thing, is that I might also be just spouting shit, and that Bianca never was like, which is, it's just going to be interesting. I think she just, and Thais is interesting from the same perspective, is that she's so caught up in her values and her need for power and all the other things, and she is complex in that she wants nice stuff, and she does want the good of stuff, and I don't think it is just because she wants to be seen as on a throne. That is part of it, but I do think she wants to have a nicer city, because she's a little bit like, I got forced to do this for my sisters and live in this place, and I don't want this for other people, kind of like. I do think there are shades of light and dark with her, which it'll be really interesting to see where the author goes with it. I think in 8 hours it's really not enough to cover so much of what you could with these characters, but there just wasn't enough plot to support anything longer, and it was fun for that, so we'll see. I think we're done.
Yeah, we've kind of, although how do we all, like, what do we all think of Luke? Like, he was very, like, she very much tried to make it look like Luke was the bad guy. Like, she kept trying to really make it look like Luke was the one that was creating the wraiths, and Luke was the one that, she tried really hard to sort of build that up. What do we think about that?
He was boring. He was a boring character. Like, I'm like, he
want
was
to say it, I guess.
the epitome of the like rich trust fund kid who doesn't know anything about the world and isn't paying attention and thinks he's got it all figured out and he's doing the right thing, because no one ever questioned him ever about anything in his life, because he was the rich, like, he was boring. I couldn't move.
Yeah, I just feel he's a politician at the end of the day. in a world where you have to have money to run. It's not everyone can rise to that status. You have to,
Um, is it amusing that I kind of got Harvey Dent vibes from him?
Yes, kind of a bit.
Yes.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Although I did definitely get more like the, yeah, he's the golden rich boy though.
Yeah.
Like I did not feel
Like
like he'd
Harvey
ever
Dent
had the,
before he becomes Two-Face, obviously.
yeah.
But
Yeah.
like, the
Okay, okay. So we taking that somewhere he's going to become Two-Face, because that would be kind of fun to see. I admit,
Yeah.
maybe I just did
Look,
not
this author knows her stuff. So I would not be surprised if we get a bit of a Two-Face.
and he
Because we're
just
going
got
to
his
find
head
out about
broken.
where he came
So
from too, right? He got kicked out of where he was.
no,
Was
that
it?
was Edie.
Oh,
Eddie.
Yeah, that was
No,
Eddie.
so
I thought him and Thais had to leave and then
Oh,
he got a new job
no, well, I
in
think that part of it was he had to leave if he wanted to stay with Thais because Thais had been adopted as
right,
otherborn, and
Uh-huh.
everyone
right.
was like, oh my God, how can you be with her? Blah blah blah. Like, and that was affecting his ability to be a politician
That's right.
which
or
kind of has
or a lawyer
parallels
or
with
whatever he was in
Eddie's
Nancy.
situation
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it does a little bit.
because Eddie's girlfriend was Horace.
Yeah, she's a doctor.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, yes, but specifically helping people with
Mm.
unwanted pregnancies.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Um, so so yes, a little bit of parallel there, I feel, but not in a way that makes either of them more interesting.
So honestly, I felt a bit like whenever that little reveal about Luke and his background with Theus and why they'd left, the way that he shared that sounded so much like the, well, I'm obviously not racist. See, here's my one black friend. Like,
Yes, like
Yeah.
it's very like, oh, I'm doing right by the poor people because look, I'm dating a poor.
yes, yeah,
Like
mm-hmm.
it had that vibe to it,
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
very
And,
like,
and
oh,
and how he was, I don't know whether the security guy, like he was the one who pissed me off the most because I was like, have you been ordered
the
to do this?
the
Or are
guy
you
that
just
was in
so,
fear,
yeah, the guy, the
the fear
fear
guy.
guy. Because when he went bursting into the dream room, I was like, were you ordered by the security guy? Or are you also so up yourself because you were born into privilege? You just think you could. I couldn't quite work it out. Can someone, was it just him going, I'm so like, I couldn't
I
work it
don't
out
remember.
whether, yeah. But that felt very weird. I'm like, yeah, oh, he arrived and demanded I be, like from the fear thing, I
Mm.
guess he put fear into Rosa and put me in the dream. I'm like going, so did you, Alex, or whatever your name is, just follow them and decide you needed to do this? Or was Luke ordering you to do
Was
this?
it
Because
Or did
it was
they
a
order
Thais.
it?
I don't know. It was
Like,
it was definitely
who ordered you to do this? Like, or did you just decide to do this?
yeah, or did you just decide to do this because you are also just as like, I'm rich and can do whatever I want? Because that was the thing about that character that I was like, when it came out, was that he was otherborn, but he was otherborn into the privileged part of
Yeah,
society. So just
it,
assumed he could do whatever he wanted whenever he wanted. And that was like,
Mm.
that was interesting.
well,
I
I mean,
wouldn't
it's
mind
kind of like
more
the difference
exploration of that.
between being like a person of color and rich or a person of color and poor.
Mm,
Like, if you're a person of color, especially in somewhere like the US or even here in Australia, and you commit a crime,
mm,
even not a crime, but like a social crime, if you're rich, you can just make it go away. But if you're poor, like, then you're
yeah,
screwed.
yeah,
And it didn't matter that he was otherborn because he had the wealth behind him to like
yeah,
not so much hide that fact, but protect him, to blanket him. I don't know how you'd
yeah,
best describe it, but like, you know what I mean? Like,
yeah,
people could overlook it because, oh, well, he's rich.
yeah.
So he comes from a good family. So obviously it doesn't mean the same as, someone from the stilts who's otherborn because, they don't know any better.
Mm, yeah. He definitely felt like that smarmy lawyer or policeman who can like basically threaten you You know what I got vibes of? Who is the guy the Friendly Geordies went after? The New South Wales Premier. That
Oh,
I got serious vibes of that whole situation. I'm like going, this is the guy who will get your house firebombed, because he's so full of privilege, and he'll just unleash, thinks he can just go off to New York and earn heaps of money. Yeah, I got that kind of vibe.
Hmm.
I don't think Kika knows anything about what happened in New South Wales, but I just got a lot of that. Yeah. Anyway.
Yeah.
have we have we finished talking about the book, my friends?
Yeah, how long have we been going for? I think we did well.
When did you start? Because I got here at almost 8:30. So I've been here an hour.
I think about 20
It was
past.
probably only like 15
Yeah.
minutes, maybe 10 minutes before you got here. So we've
Okay.
been going for just over an hour-ish.
Yeah.
Oh, that's good. That's a good chat for this book. Yeah.
And I mean, it is technically a YA book. Like, it
Yeah,
isn't
I
short.
wanted to ask that. Is it YA? Because I got those vibes.
It
And
is
once
it's technically a YA book. Like, it is, that's what it's put under. If you like look at it on the Penguin Random House, like their website, they
right.
call it a
Yeah.
YA book.
All right.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
so for a and I mean it was only what 300 odd pages.
Yeah.
Mm.
So it's not a very long book, and it's also a YA book. So I feel like it was always going to be for us a bit more of an easier read
Yeah.
Yeah.
size wise, like it,
Yeah.
and just weight wise of it's a YA.
Yeah.
Like
And our protagonist is like what, 17?
Yeah.
So,
I think
yeah,
I think Io is supposed to be 17 or 18, and then Thais is supposed to be
22 odd or something.
20,
Mhm.
22 to 25
Yeah.
ish.
Yeah. All quite young, but honestly, like me, usually me in YA books, I get really shitty whenever there's no personal growth happening for any of the characters. At least in this one, there was obviously like a journey, and there was some like internal
Yeah.
thoughts going on and stuff. So, which is probably why I was like,
There was
okay, this was good. I
stuff
didn't
going.
rage quit the book because it didn't bug me. Like,
I did
Yeah.
find it a
Yeah.
bit angsty, but
Yeah.
Well, I
Oh,
mean,
there's
it's
there was
like
so much
there was
angst.
always going to
Felt
be some.
very sensitive.
yes, there
yeah, yeah.
was.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Much
And I
angst.
mean, I know that part of the issue is for me, I just found difficulty picking it up. And I think that's just because I wasn't connecting with any of the characters.
Mm,
Because I'm kind of getting to that age where I'm not connecting with a lot of
yeah.
YA characters anymore. Because I'm
Yep.
not in that part of my life anymore. But anyway, I'm
Mhm,
glad
mhm.
that we all enjoyed parts of the book, even if we didn't enjoy the whole book.
I did
It
feel like
sounds
it was worth the read. Like,
Yeah.
it
Yeah.
sounds like some of us are going to at least try the second book, see how we go.
And I actually think it's not a bad thinking now, not, kind of going, oh, it's a YA book. It's actually not a bad, if I knew someone who was YA and they were looking for a way to get into alternate world fantasy or post-apocalyptic fantasy, this is
It's a
not a
good
bad
stepping
one.
stone.
Along with Six of Crows, this is not a bad
Yeah.
one. And I would recommend this. Like if a 14-year-old is like going, well, what's so good about it? I'm like, this is a good place to start. See how you go.
It's probably easier to get into for a younger group. Like,
Yeah.
I would probably recommend this for someone a bit younger who wasn't quite ready for something like Six of Crows, just because
Yeah.
Six of Crows is a little bit darker in some points.
Yeah. Yeah. It's just Six of Crows is a really rollicking good ride. And I never felt like I had to go, oh, I better read this book. I never felt that way for Six of Crows. I was like, what is happening?
Yeah. Six of Crows is very like, let's sit down, let's read this book, let's get it. I've got to finish
It's
it.
too exciting.
Whereas this book was very like, I'll pick it up and read it, or I'm not going to pick it up. But it wasn't terrible. We enjoyed it, and it was good for a first novel. Like,
oh,
if
absolutely.
you think about it like that, this is her first novel she's released by herself. This is a pretty good book for a first novel. Like, I've read some people's first novels, and they have not been good. So like,
yeah,
like you kind of got to like, we've read a lot of books, and like we've read a lot of books that have their storytelling
We lost Naomi.
Maybe.
I think so.
Where kind of I in fact
Yeah.
had a lot of time.
Sweetie,
sorry?
because you cut out completely at one
Oh,
point.
I was just saying that we're in a place of privilege where we've all read a lot of books by a lot of people who have had a long time to build up their world, their ability to tell a story.
Yeah.
And we're biased by that fact that we've had that privilege, whereas she hasn't had the chance to build up that skill yet. But it was still like reading it in a way of, this was her first novel. It's a YA book. And, you know, reading it in that sort of light does give me more of a like, this was actually better than what I sort of was first thinking. Like, I can understand where the weaknesses lie, because it's like, it's not going to be the same level as some other books that we read. But anyway, to the side, thank you everyone for joining us. If you are still here with us, next month we are reading Fathom Folk, which is Bobby's pick. And if you join us then, we'll see you then. Otherwise, have a great night.